My name is Keith Driver. I'm the manager for the Tattamagush Boat Shop at Creamery Square. In 2010, Tattamagush celebrated the tricentenary of the Acadians first settling in Tattamagush, and that coincided with our opening of the boat shop as a new facility in Creamery Square. Pretty soon it was decided we should do something significant to celebrate this in respect to the Acadians, and we decided that we would attempt to replicate an Acadian chaloupe, a boat which was used extensively by the early settlers in this part of the New World. These people had come from France and were more or less dumped on the beach and left to their own devices, often with a single, possibly dilapidated boat from the French warship which had brought them to their new country. There was an abundance of lumber here, and after looking after their habitations against the onset of pretty horrific winters for them, they had to look into the business of transportation. Indian trails were really the only way of getting around. The Mi'kmaq had networked the country on foot, but the easiest way to get around was by water, and the best way of doing it was to make sure they had suitable boats to do it. Out of this came the building of the chaloupes, which were the equivalent of a pickup truck nowadays. They would carry a substantial amount of cargo and could also be used for fishing locally. As far as Tattamagush is concerned, they were here only 45 years, relatively short span in history. They came from France and landed here. This is recreationally speaking, this is an unused piece of water largely here. It's beautiful, we just don't have enough activity out in it to satisfy ourselves, shall we say. And we feel that in recreating this chaloupe, she should very much be an operational boat. She should go in the water and be used. And one of the greatest ways to do that would be to reenact the supply route, which was pretty much unique to the role of Tattamagush at that time. It would be quite possible, practically it would be a practical thing to do, to have that boat seaworthy enough, this boat we have here, seaworthy enough to take a cargo from Tattamagush up to Louisbourg with a crew of probably, we'll say high school students or somebody, volunteers who would be happy to reenact, probably in costume, and give the Acadians here an idea of just what it was like to do that task of taking cargo from Tattamagush up to Louisbourg, and just what it required in human endeavor. In trying to replicate an Acadian chaloupe, we started with a backbone, which is a keel with a stem at the bow and a transom at the stern, and then place molds upon it. Molds define the shape of the boat. The biggest one is in the middle of the boat, and then they taper off at the ends. But this gives you the boat shape. All these structural members have to be precisely aligned at right angles to each other, and vertical and so forth, and tied in place with ribbons or stringers running around the outside. Ribs are then steamed inside of that, and the ribs again conform to the boat shape. They're all part of the business of the boat shape growing in a sort of basket form. On top of this comes the planking, and the planking is the most spectacular part of building a boat and really makes you realize that it is a boat, in fact. To create these things up, we had some plans. We had a half model made by one of our crew members, and we were able to get precise measurements of where places, the different points of the structure should be on the boat. And we also did what is called lofting, which is drawing those lines out full size. So you could take a part of the boat and go over to that full size lofting and decide if it was the right shape and size. The Acadians almost certainly would not have done these mathematically based preliminaries. They would have probably were not boat builders or seamen by background, and they would have, but they could have been good house carpenters, and they could have laid out a backbone, stood it upright on the beach, probably close to the boat which they'd been given, if they had one from a warship, and say, like, we'll replicate that one over there. And then they would have simply bent planks around it. They would have heated those planks somehow, either in fires or hot stones. Maybe they would have generated steam by pouring water over hot stones, but very often just by putting planks in with wet cloths around them in a fire, and bending those planks around and fastening them into place, and creating a boat shape themselves, which might not have been exactly the same as the one they were trying to replicate, but would have been close enough and would have been strong enough once ribs were placed inside of it, which again would have had to be bent in. They had lots of natural materials locally. They had stands of lumber behind, far more than we've got nowadays. So that would have been something on their side. Also, they would have had somebody in their midst who would be akin to being a blacksmith of some, and would be able to provide the fastenings and the ironworks which they would have required. For caulking, they would have could have had horsehair. They could have made their own glue. They would probably have found a way to fabricate their own ropes or have them shipped in from France, and either they would have had the sailcloth brought in, or it's possible, since flax was grown here, I believe, that they may have made their own flax sailcloth anyway from that, and made their own sails in due course. They were hard workers, they were ingenious. I'm quite sure they would have solved a lot of these problems there on the spot domestically.